Welcome back to Mornings at ANC. The social media landscape is changing communication and truth the way we know it. In recent days, talk of a supposed ouster effort against President Duterte has triggered a firestorm online, even if Malacanang says it has yet to be verified.
What's happening to today's communications and who's leading it? We asked communications expert and speaker Doy Roque, the Managing Director of M2.0 Communications, to weigh in on the online exchange and the way we perceive truth. He'll also tell us how to reach out to an emerging and impressionable and very potentially influential generation. Good morning.
Good morning, Doy.
Doy.
Hey, thank you for having me. All right, it's rare that we get to have someone of your experience
That's
to tackle
true.
the current events.
It's rare that we get to tag team somebody with their experience.
Doy, just give us a bit of a snapshot of how you see social media today and really how it's pushing the conversation pretty much in the real world as well.
Let me frame it this way. I think that we are the new drug addicts.
Drug addicts, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and the drug
And the drug is social media.
Is social media.
I mean,
Wow.
if you see it from kids 5 years old to we're right Gen X, right?
Yeah.
Right. We're probably millennials. Yeah, we'd like to think we're millennials, but
I see. I'm pushing for that.
That confirms us as Gen X. The
Yeah.
Okay.
And even our parents and grandparents, they're all on Facebook. 2 billion on Facebook right now. So that's the new drug. Yeah.
Well, how do you see, we touched on it, the idea of Lenny leaks and the way people consume the news, the way people sort of perceive, what is news, nowadays. What's your appreciation of that? I mean, you likened it to being, addicted to social media, being, drug addicts addicted to it.
Yeah.
But, how do you see what's going on now?
Well, pertaining to Lenny leaks, right? I mean, have we ever have we discovered the source of Lenny leaks?
Right.
Right? No. And I doubt if we ever will.
And here's the question: Do the people who talk about it and share it, do they even care?
Exactly.
Right.
So that's the thing. I think that's something that concerns a lot of people, especially with the proliferation of fake news from fake news sites and all this and that. Not just in the Philippines.
Right.
It's happening all over the world, even in the U.S. And you've heard Donald Trump talk about it as well, and the criticisms about Facebook. So talk about, give us your insight on that as well, and how the leadership of these social media, the conglomerates are concerned, or they're like, we're fine with this because it's making the ball roll.
Yeah. So if you look at a social media participant, let's say anyone on Facebook or Twitter or Reddit or whatever, as an addict, and you picture him as a guy who gets fed intravenously by content, right? And now picture him, favoring certain designer drugs, right? So because the content that we need tends nowadays, because of social media, tends to affirm our beliefs, our suspicions, our values.
Interesting. Right. I like the analogy. Right. I'm picturing it. I am.
Right. So you get fed intravenously, and that actually gives you the energy to move, to do things. Right. And Lenny leaks is a drug.
Right.
Right. It feeds a community, a community that thrives and that needs the energy to find something that affirms whatever suspicions, whatever values, etc.
Right. The way we consume the news, though, is exactly that. We seem to be addicted to consuming the news, but we don't seem to be addicted to getting to the bottom of things, so to speak. We have to be aware of the way we tailor also the kind of content that we receive really shapes the truth as we perceive it, really. Or are we really interested in getting to the bottom of things, or really, just like you said, really affirming what we read, what we want to read. We read into the headlines what we want it to say.
Exactly. A lot of authors have said that we live in a post-truth world, right? But what does post-truth even mean?
Right.
I think it means that we have our own truth defined by the communities we are with.
Yep.
So let's just say you are, you believe in Lenny leaks. and that you think that this is true and correct. What you want is you want to be fed new material all the time that affirms your own truth.
Right.
If you don't believe it, then you say you want to be fed with material that says this is not true at all. This is fake news.
Right.
So, and that's dangerous, but it's also an opportunity for business if done correctly.
Right. Another thing that part of that is, aside from the consumption, is the engagement. And I'm sure you've heard this at like Mokausen's blog.
Yeah.
The Facebook page of that has barged into the top 5 together with news organizations, right? But in terms of engagement, from what I last saw on the number, she's number 1. And how has this fascinated you in terms of how this has risen and you know that this culture of that generation on Facebook nowadays are fine or trust somebody or some group that's not the traditional, you know, news or media outlets?
So it's very challenging in the way we're in a world that's changing so fast, right? But I blame 5 decades of abuse in advertising.
Okay.
Advertising. Okay.
I know it's our livelihood. It's also mine. But all that abuse has caused so much distrust.
Okay.
In the tradition, what is called the traditional sources. So that's why people have, in a way, said, "Hey, if I can't trust him, then I'll go to my friend."
They're looking for alternatives.
Alternatives with their friends.
Right.
So because then it's all about social media communities nowadays. So if your friend says that if you, let's say, believe in Lenny Leaks and your friend says that is true, then you kind of have a feedback loop.
Right.
Right. And then you start thinking like you start having groupthink. Right. And then this groupthink rolls because if other people have the same, let's say, frustrations as you, and then you tell them, hey, the solution here is to look at them. The solution is actually to blame them. Then you start creating a bigger and bigger community.
It snowballs.
It snowballs.
Yeah.
Right. But do you put that down to, is that something that's unique to what we're labeling as, you know, Gen Z, and we'll get into a little bit of who falls into which bucket, you know, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, the millennials, so on and so forth. You know, is that unique to them, or do you see that as the way you know, social media works in general, whether it's us, the younger generation, or our parents who are now on social media as well?
I think that it's not unique to Gen Z. It's basically, it works across the board. But the thing about Gen Z is that they're the generation that grew up with this, right? And there's a difference between millennials, a little difference between millennials and Gen Z. Millennials, let's say we're millennials, we grew up with dial-up.
Okay.
Right? We grew up with that sound, that right?
Which my kids have no idea what it is.
Exactly. I have a 17-year-old daughter. She has no idea. I have a twin 6-year-olds, and they have absolutely they take it for granted that they have their iPads with them going to the mall, etc. And they use it in the mall. We didn't have that.
For them, it's just second nature. It's just what's there.
They're Gen Z.
Okay.
They're the ones who take it for granted. They are the ones who have their own communities, and they've lived it.
Right. Well, I think we have a little bit of a graphic, and I think there you go. We're flashing it on the screen actually to sort of make the distinction between Generation Z, the millennials, Generation Y and X, and so on and so forth. What would you say is the biggest differentiator or the subtle differentiator between Generation Z and the millennials?
Okay, first of all, it's the age.
Okay.
Gen Z is 7 to 21 years old. Okay. I mean, it's a demographic.
Right.
Right. So, millennials are 21 to 36. Right. So
I just missed it.
Sorry.
There are, you know, TJ was making a distinction. There are sort of gray areas. There are sort of gray areas. You know, is it driven, or rather, is the distinction really age or really spheres of interest and spheres of how you react and interact with the surroundings
and the way you interact with technology?
Right. Yeah.
So 22 to 36 millennials, right? We had desktop.
Yep.
Before we grew up with desktop, we grew up with laptop. These guys, they're all about smartphones. They're all about iPads and all of that. No, they probably don't even have a desktop at home.
Not unless they see one in school.
Not unless they see one in school. And not unless they're a high-end gamer. Right. So us, we tend to go home or we tend to go to the office, use our laptops.
Sure.
To them, this is native. They live their whole lives around the phone. Right. So, and because the phone has a camera, to them it's very easy to create their own videos and to create their
own content.
So the big difference, let's say, with millennials, we still had text. We still lived in a generation where the Philippines was the texting capital of the world. Right. But them, it's all about video. It's all about and content creation is very easy for them.
And instant communication, I'd say. Back then, the SMS, was SMS, these forwards and messages. But I think one thing different now is the messaging apps. That's huge. Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Viber, all that. And I think the fact that it's so instant because you can see whether it's read or not.
Right.
There's group chats. I've never been so connected to my old friends today than I was years ago.
But I think to add on to what you're saying here is text-based communication is sort of on the tail end. People are doing more and more video and sort of image. The type of communication we have nowadays it's always almost like a meme. It's always a picture and a little bit.
Even though those group chats, it's all images.
It's all images, and that seems to be the way the Gen Z is communicating and digesting and creating their content. That seems to be what they're all about. The ease at which they can create content also, I think, shapes the way that the content is as easily consumed. Like we were pointing out, you have people creating their own quote-unquote newscasts from devices which they carry with them in their back pocket.
So let me ask you this question: do you have a blog?
No, I don't personally.
Do you have a blog?
It exists. It's not moving.
So same. I've created a blog, but it's not something that I am able to update constantly.
I do have Twitter, which supposedly is defined by as a microblog.
Okay.
Initially, remember?
Exactly.
That's how they claimed it was.
It is. That's great. So
I'm fine.
You can be Gen Z then. You know what I discovered 2 weeks ago? I spoke to my 17-year-old daughter. Because she creates amazing artworks, right? Okay. And then so I told her, hey, why don't you create a Tumblr account? And then she said, Dad, I already have a Tumblr account.
Right.
That's 20,000 followers.
Yeah.
I just
what?
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't know?
I didn't know. And then I asked my kids, so anong gusto mong mangyari sa'yo paglaki mo? And then of course our generation, we're used to I want to be a doctor. No, they say, Dad, we want to be YouTubers. That's what we want to be.
We're just looking at my compadre here. We have the same thing.
We shared many hours standing in line at a YouTube event. At the YouTube event, which we bring our kids to, and it really is the be all and end all of their existence.
That's their dream now.
That is their dream.
You're right. I mean, our generation had goals to jump to be doctors. I jumped to be an athlete. They all want to be a YouTube star now.
And much of it, I think, is closely tied to how successful they perceive many of these YouTubers to be.
And how fun the work is.
How fun the work is.
Yeah.
Let's take off on that. What do you put this phenomenon down to? There is a huge success when it comes to YouTube content, whether or not it has a news slant or not. React to that.
We grew up thinking that the publisher is a big corporation, right? Our kids have grown up thinking that they are the publishers.
Right.
They don't need a big corporation backing them up.
Do you see that as anti-establishment, being sort of, if you're not one of the big guys and you're one of the small guys, you're a little more legit. You're a little more trustworthy. You're a little more, not part of the system. Is that how?
Yeah.
Exactly. That feeds into the whole idea of the illusion of authenticity. Okay. There's no such thing as real authenticity. Everything is manufactured. Right? But yes, you are correct. It reaches
That's what they resonate with, really, the idea of authenticity.
How do communicators learn from this? So we've established that, and we've seen the trends, we've seen, the definition of the disciplines that are existing now on social media. How key is it for communicators, brands, advertisers, media, political groups, governments? This is the medium now, it's clear.
Exactly.
How do they reach out? I mean, how do they effectively reach out to this generation now?
Let's talk about authentic, right? Because you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And I said there's no such thing as a real authentic thing, right? So, but we need to get to the core of what authentic means, and that means to a lot of people being true to yourself, right? And asking the question, are we who we say we are, right? If I may cite an example, President Duterte, for all his faults, and the truth is he terrifies me. He basically promised one very simple thing, and that is to kill and these drug addicts, right? And in a way, he's been authentic in that sense.
What you see is what you get.
What you see is what you get, right? So that is crucial nowadays to a brand, right? And let me go back to the distrust of advertising. Have you ever gone to, let's say, a vacation, let's say to Boracay, and then you go to a website, it's such a beautiful hotel.
Sure, yeah.
And then you get to the hotel, and this is not what I expect.
It looks like the picture, but it looks a lot smaller. It's not quite as clean.
Exactly.
It's a lot more crowded than it did than it looked in the photo. How do you?
But can you blame them? Of course, you want to put your best foot forward, right? Like, for example, nowadays, the single people out there, they're on Tinder, and they're putting out their best photos. They won't put this is how I woke up look. This is I just woke up like this. But can you blame, people and brands and
but that's advertising.
Yeah.
So you advertise, and you put your best foot forward.
Right.
Now, when you sell experiences instead, and when you ask the community to vouch for these experiences, that's not advertising anymore.
Okay. What do you call that?
Right? So I'd say that's good PR.
Community engagement.
Yeah,
But
community
do you
engagement.
think though that this generation, Gen Z, has a built-in filter for things like this? I mean, they see through. They know, they're savvy when it comes.
Technology has given them that filter. So now, if you're Gen Z, for instance, instead of just taking a look at the website, you take a look at Facebook, you take a look at all the other social media, and look at the reviews.
Right.
You go to TripAdvisor. You read the reviews.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that makes it authentic because it's other people like yourself, regular people, who are saying that, hey, this is actually a good hotel.
Right.
Instead of just looking at the website and seeing photoshopped images.
Yeah.
Would you say which is why the bloggers have really become very influential nowadays? I mean, I go to a press conference now for coverage, like half regular media, half bloggers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's these changes, I think, kind of herald the age of the community, where it's not one big community anymore. It's not like we all watch the news at 7 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
Right? It's different communities and different sorts of news that cater to these different communities.
Right. Cool. Okay. I mean, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots more to learn. Thanks for opening our eyes, to the subtleties of communicating with Gen Z. People want to know a little bit more. Want to pick up on the discussion a little bit more. Where can they find you? Where's your blog and where's your?
So I have a Twitter. I think it's Doy Roque at Twitter. You can just Google it and then
Doy Roque. Okay.
At Doy Roque, and then and then we have our website, M2.coms.com.
There you go.
Right. Well, push the conversation with Doy. I guess parting shots, Doy, for now. What would you say would be your best advice as a look at where social media and communications is today?
Yeah.
To everybody out there.
So the first is be authentic. The second is, especially for companies, you have to create your own content. You have to see yourselves as publishers, right? Because if you don't publish your own content, then you don't feed the drug addict. We need to feed the drug addicts, and that's us. And I'm not saying drug addicts in a bad way, right?
It is what it is.
Yes. The other thing is you have to go beyond Facebook. Facebook is not the whole world.
Right.
There are other things, like you're on Twitter. there's Reddit, there's Snapchat,
Instagram.
there's Instagram,
Musical.ly.
there's Quora, there's so many forums,
many, yeah.
right? You want to be able to say, hey, my audience is probably going to appreciate something on Quora or whatever. Right? The other thing is you need to rethink advertising. So advertising used to be a pitch to sell a product. We need to think of advertising as a way to entertain, as a way to give a new perspective, and as a way to help the customer, right? It cannot be just to sell a product.
Right. No, it's no longer just informing them. This
It's
is
no
out
longer
there,
just informing.
and this is for
Yeah.
you. Well, as you said, about just tip of the iceberg. A lot more you can learn from Doy. So thank you, Doy. We wish you a good chat. I'm not chatting all morning, but we got a break for now. But we'll have you again soon. We eventually talk more about the trends in social media. But for now, at Doy Roque on Twitter. Thanks for joining us, Doy. And we'll see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, folks, coming up, Davao City prepares for the visit of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. You're still watching Mornings at ANC.